It's one of Court TV's most legendary trials, the Menendez brothers, who shot and killed their parents, Jose and Kitty, back in 1989. At trial, the brothers claim they were physically and sexually abused by their father. But now, after spending more than 30 years behind bars, they're hoping to be freed. A Netflix drama series and documentary brought new attention to the case, causing many to call for their release, including the LA District Attorney, George Gascón. But he lost his re-election, and now his successor is speaking out about the Menendez brothers. And good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Ted Rollins in for Vinnie Politan tonight, and we're going to begin tonight with the Menendez brothers. Erik and Lyle Menendez were convicted of shooting and killing both of their parents, of course, back in 1989. The brothers claim they committed the murders because of years of physical and sexual abuse at the hands of their father, Jose. Even so, they were convicted and sentenced to life without parole. That was it, no parole. But since that day, nearly 35 years ago, a lot has changed. Lyle and Erik have been called model prisoners. New evidence has come to light that might prove the allegations of that sexual abuse, and that extremely popular Netflix series and documentary has brought public interest back to their case. Then the election happened. LA County District Attorney George Gascón, before the election, came out and made a big deal about saying, I recommend that Erik and Lyle come out. People thought, was this a political stunt at the time? But the office recommended that they basically be eligible for parole. The problem is George Gascón did not win his re-election. Nathan Hochman destroyed him in the election, and now he is taking over as the next Los Angeles County District Attorney on December 2nd. So what does that mean for the Menendez brothers? They have a hearing on December 11th. Let's check in with Nathan Hochman. We have him here live with us on Closing Arguments. First, congratulations on your overwhelming win in the election.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. The election, you won in a landslide. What is that? Where do you stand with the Menendez brothers? Oh, I think we might have some communication problems with the new district attorney. Can you hear me, sir? And if so, I want to start with the obvious question of where you stand with the Menendez brothers, what should happen, and what will happen when you take over. All right, we're obviously having problems. He can't hear us, so let's to do this. We can we'll wait to reestablish him with Nathan. We'll reestablish the communication. Do we have him now? Let's do this. Let's listen to George Gascón, the old DA. This was at a press conference in late October, and this was explaining his decision to recommend that Erik and Lyle be resentenced. Take a listen.
They have been in prison for nearly 35 years. I believe that they have paid their debt to society, and the system provides a vehicle for their case to be reviewed by a parole board, and then the parole concurs with my assessment, and it will be their decision, and it will be released accordingly. I must underline, however, this case will be filed in court tomorrow. The final decision will be made by the judge. Court has to agree with my conclusion that they deserve to be resentenced. It is very possible that there may be members of this office that will be present in court opposing their resentencing. And they have a right to do so. We encourage those that disagree with us to speak, and the court is the appropriate place to do it. We certainly feel we're very sure not only that the brothers have rehabilitated and that they will be safe to be reintegrated in society, but that they have paid their dues not only for the crimes that they committed, but because of all the other things they have done to improve the lives of so many others.
That was George Gascón, the outgoing district attorney in Los Angeles County. Now we have Nathan Hochman. We've reestablished our communication. Hopefully, Nathan, you can hear us. Let's start with your gut. What's your opinion right now? I know you want to do some more research, but what's your take on the Menendez brothers, and what should we expect from you and your office now that you'll be in charge starting on December 2nd?
Thank you for this opportunity, and I'd love to give you my my two cents impression about the case based on remembering snippets of it years ago, and I haven't actually even seen the Netflix docuseries. But I would be doing a disservice to the Menendez brothers, to the victim families, to the public, if I do anything other than a thorough review of the facts and the law before I weigh in on the case. I mean, in order to actually be informed of this case, you've got to review thousands of pages of confidential prison records that I don't have access to at this point. You should review the thousands of pages of transcripts from 2 months-long trials. You should talk to the prosecutors, law enforcement, the defense counsel, and any victim member, your family members that want to speak to you. And only at that point will you have the factual record to then apply to the legal standards, render an opinion, and defend that opinion in court.
Do you think that it was a political stunt by Gascón to get out in front of the cameras right before the election? He was down in the polls and put his name in front and his face in front of this issue for maybe people that wanted to see the Menendez brothers out?
Yes, I do. And the reason is that Gascón got the original habeas in May of 2023, 16 months ago. He got the initial resentencing request in 2024. So if he really cared about the Menendezes and wanted to begin the resentencing process, he could have done it 8 to 16 months before. He could have even started it right after the election, because even by losing the election, he was still the district attorney till December 1st. So him doing it 12 days before the election, when he was 30 points down and he had basically run out of money, cast a cloud of credibility over the decision. People don't know if it was the just decision or just a political ploy, and that's something I will avoid by doing the extensive and thorough review of the facts and the law before I weigh in on the matter.
You won in a landslide. You held that 30% through the election. But do you think that people voted for you because they didn't want the Menendez brothers out? Because let's face it, you were up against a polarizing individual in George Gascón, who is, you know, post-George Floyd, he really hit with some voters. He was elected, obviously. But do you think that the Menendez brothers had anything to do with people voting for or against you?
I would think it had very, very little to do with any voter who voted for or against me. I think what voters were voting for was safety. Turns out that safety was the crossover issue of 2024. And I know that by having spoken to thousands of people across Los Angeles, from across the political spectrum, ultra-left liberals, independents, conservative Republicans, Black, white, Latino, Asian groups, every religious group out there, and from across the 4,000 miles of LA County. And I'm here to tell you they don't agree on much, but they do agree that George Gascón's social experiment with their safety failed, that they felt less safe today than they did when he came into office, and they were ready for change. They were telling me throughout my travels, enough is enough. They were tired of living in fear. And that's fear not just at the experiential level, it's the objective level. The California Department of Justice put in its statistics that showed that violent crime, hate crimes, property crimes, fentanyl poisoning, shoplifting are up either double or triple digits. So I think safety is what was driving voters to vote for me ultimately, not the particulars of the Menendez case.
So what happens now with the Menendez case? There's a hearing on December 11th. Is there going to be a delay? Are you going to push for a delay? Because your office has filed, technically, under Gascón. You've already filed the motion for the recall. And two things here. So what's going to happen short term? And tell us, if you would, how this works. 1172 in California, most people around the country are like, what? They were sentenced to life without parole. What's going on here? But California has a mechanism for people, if it's recommended, to be resentenced or even have their conviction vacated and then resentenced on a lower charge. So talk us through, if you would.
Certainly. So here's what the three tracks are in the Menendez case. There's first a habeas track. That's the motion that was filed in May of 2023. That has a hearing the week of November 25th before I assume office. And that's the track that's looking at whether the new evidence that's presented can justify a new trial. So that's on one track. Second track is a clemency petition that's been made directly to the governor. Governor has no deadline on that. He could have weighed in and given the Menendez's clemency all the way back when he started in 2017. He can do it later today if he wants to, or at any time or never. There's not a deadline on clemency. But assuming that doesn't happen, it lands on my desk the week of December 2nd when I start, then there is this resentencing issue. Now, the way resentencing works is that on December 11th, there'll be a hearing. If I'm ready to proceed and have done that extensive factual and legal review, we'll proceed. If not, I might ask for some additional time, but I've got 34 years of criminal justice experience with hundreds of cases under my belt. I can read a record expeditiously, even if a lengthy one, and be ready as soon as possible, whether it's December 11th or soon thereafter. Let's assume for a moment that the judge were to grant the resentencing motion. Effectively, what that would do is throw the issue to the parole board. They would then have a parole hearing. If the parole board, for instance, were to grant parole, then it goes to the governor's desk. He has 120 days to either agree with it, send it back to the full parole board, or reverse that and keep the Menendezes behind bars. An example of that is when the Sirhan, the assassin of Robert F. Kennedy, came in 2022. Originally, the parole board granted parole. The governor ultimately reversed that grant of parole. So the Menendezes have these three tracks that this case is proceeding on. Some of these tracks would either get them that new trial, get them out immediately, or go through this whole resentencing parole governor process. If they were to prevail, it would happen months and months later.
If you disagree with what George Gascón was implementing, and with the office, I mean, you even have a unit in your office for resentencing because it does come up, and you have people dedicated to it. Let's say you disagree. They don't check the boxes that you want. Hasn't the motion already been filed and it should be up to a judge, or can you pull it back?
So again, I hesitate to speculate on what I'm going to do before I do that thorough review of the facts and the law. But the various courses of action are just that. You can agree with what's, you can supplement the record, you can seek to change the record, but it doesn't pay for me to speculate on what I'm going to do before I do this extensive review, and I choose not to speculate.
A lot of people will be obviously watching. Have you been in contact? I know you want to talk to the attorneys representing the family members. Have you done any of that work, or will you wait till the 2nd?
I'll wait to the 2nd because you want to have the full evidentiary record before you and study it before you go ahead and talk to prosecutors, defense attorneys, victim family members. So you make sure you ask them the right questions. I mean, it does a disservice to the Menendez brothers, to the and to the victim family member if you do anything less than a thorough review, which is what I would do, not just in the Menendez case, but quite candidly in all cases that end up on my desk.
Fair enough. Nathan Hochman, thank you for joining us. And it's getting dark there in Los Angeles. The sun has set. It's 5 o'clock, 5:15. Congratulations on your big win. And we will all be waiting to see what he decides. It's going to be up to him to look over all of the information that he has. He says he's not going to start until the 2nd of December, but he didn't rule out the 11th. kind of boasting that he's been through this enough that he could get up to speed by the 11th, because that's what that first date is in terms of the resentencing after the November 25th habeas. We will wait and see, and we will be covering it all. We'll get a break right now. The think tank's going to join us after break. We'll react to the new DA. We'll have more of the Menendez brothers news, but first, here's a preview of what's coming up next hour on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, after Madeline Soto was reported missing, investigators found explicit images of her on her mother's boyfriend's phone and Google Drive. Stephen Stearns has been charged with Madeline's murder and more than 60 crimes related to child porn. But police found images of other children as well. Will Stephen Stearns face more charges?
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Tyler, why do you think you killed your parents?
Who's going to get out of my head? Interview with a Killer. Season finale, Sunday, 8/7 Central. And don't miss the new season coming in 2025, only on Court TV.
The reason why I'm here today and why I came in front of all of you about 10 days ago is because there was a more recent documentary about the case that again brought a tremendous amount of public attention. And we know there have been other documentaries, so this is not the first, this is a more recent one. And frankly, our office got flooded with requests for information. And even though this case was already scheduled to be heard in late November, I decided to move this forward because, quite frankly, we did not have enough resources to handle all the requests. And one of the things that I try to do in this office is to be very transparent in everything.
That was L.A. District Attorney George Gascón at a press conference a few weeks ago, explaining after the release of the new series about the Menendez brothers, his office deciding to review the case and then ultimately recommend that Erik and Lyle Menendez be resentenced for murdering their parents. Many people speculated that Gascón's decision had something to do with this month's election that he was running in. Well, he lost big. And the new guy in town, Nathan Hochman, he was just with us here on Closing Arguments. He's going to take over December 2nd. He is now going to be leading this charge, and he says he's going to need some time. He's going to look at all of the available information and then decide what to do. There was a hearing on December 11th in terms of the recall request that was already submitted by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Everyone's ready to go. Mark Garagos is representing the family. He has witnesses lined up, ready to come in to talk about the Menendez and their rehabilitation. Let's bring in the think tank, see what they think about all this. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Eklund Bursey is with us. Also with us, retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi and Los Angeles County Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé. Philip, you know all about what's going on in L.A. Did you hear? I don't know if you were able to watch the interview we just did, but what's your take on where this is going post-election?
Well, I mean, first of all, you got to let the man put his keys in his briefcase down and, get his mug and get situated. I mean, just entering political office probably for the first time in his life. And I am heartened by the fact that this man won the election because of his prosecutorial experience and his criminal defense experience. I think he's going to bring a proportional balance in his not only his hiring, but also his filing decisions. So I'm actually happy for their office. Not to mention that there has been nonstop internecine strife since Gascón was elected because of his groundbreaking policies that he instituted literally overnight. I mean, the attorneys that worked under the prior administration, Jackie Lacey, I'm not going to say that they had some rigorous or difficult guidelines, but they had some precedent, if you will, and they had some predictability in how things were going to go, and the rank and file was pretty much happy with how all that went. went. And then suddenly, when Gascón took office, he flipped the script and had to whipsaw everybody into pivoting into a new ideology, and it took them by surprise. And I think the biggest problem is, in my honest opinion, is he had very poor stewardship skills. He could not manage the office. The morale was at an all-time low, and they actually had very serious staffing problems. They could not keep people or hire people. So I know that Mr. Hochman's going to bring in a new energy, a new ideology, and rebuild that office. Now, having said that,
what about the Menendez brothers, Philip?
Yes. Once he rolls up his sleeves, I truly believe, and I really mean this, just like a corporation, there is great deference to decisions that have already been made so you can move on with other business. And I think it would create more strife to go back and revisit a prosecutorial decision that's already been made. You have to allow prosecutors and judges to remain independent from any political type fallout, from any political problems, and let things go forward as they already were. Because I do believe that if you leave things as they are right now, everything will run its course in the proper direction for these young men. I have no doubt, I really don't, that at some point parole is going to be granted for them, or worst case scenario, I do think that they will be resentenced by the higher parole board within parole very quickly. So it's a question of time. And for now, we have to await the outcome of the departure of Gascón before I think we see a real outcome, because I sincerely doubt that anything's going to happen with that habeas petition while he is still in office.
Right. Eklund, your take on what should happen there, despite the new DA. To Philip's point, they have a unit in that office that already recommended this, and people that do the work on these recalls, and the recall motion's already been filed. Just let it go? What do you think?
I think that the habeas would be against judicial economy. I think it's too expensive to go through all of that, especially this type of case, and especially with this amount of publicity. I think that the previous DA just hopped on just in time for the Netflix special to come and just advertise what they would do anyway. I think that I think that a resentencing should happen with a with a suggestion from the DA saying, time served. It's not like they didn't serve any time. If this case were to have happened in 2023, I'll say 2023, based on their ages and based on what we know about the effects of abuse and what we know about different family dynamics, they would not have been, I do not believe that they would be sentenced to that much. The fact that the family that they're talking to is their family, I believe that just a resentencing and probably a sentence to time served should be the best choice.
Well, yeah, or be out on parole, and they have a system in place, according to Attorney Mark Garagos, who's representing family members for them to reenter society. Kirk, California is unique in that they do have this mechanism from the legislature to try to clear out some of the overcrowding in this 1172. They want people who aren't a danger to society, who are of a certain age, to be let out on parole because of the overcrowding situation there. Your thoughts on if the Menendez brothers weren't the Menendez brothers, would they maybe already have taken advantage of this opportunity?
I don't think so. And I think, Ted, one of the things we're missing kind of in this is what you mentioned, the power of the Netflix special, right? We have all these legal means available, the 1172, the habeas petition, everything else. But what really got this ball rolling was a Netflix special, 2 of them, right? And that brought the political pressure on Gascón. And I think that political pressure is also going to apply to Mr. Hochman. He's certainly presenting himself as a tough on crime, but he's got that political bent to it. He's saying, hey, listen, the governor could commute them. What's the big deal? What's the pressure on me? He's trying to kind of pass the ball, if you will, because this Netflix special was so powerful and created a political environment of influential people that want to see these men released. So whether that is through a granting of parole or a commutation or a resentencing, a time served, as Eklund mentioned, I think something is going to happen here, because that political pressure through the Netflix, more powerful than legal mechanisms, I guess, is the Netflix special, that these men will ultimately wind up being released.
You do have a series of events, Philip, that need to take place, and if an elected official comes up and stops it, that could be political. It would not, maybe not be advantageous for him. What's your gut in terms of what this office is going to do, either on the 11th or afterwards, if they ask for a delay?
I think they're going to leave the resentencing petition on calendar and let a judge decide if they will get 50 to life. If they get 50 to life, they will be presumptively eligible for a parole hearing, and the matter will get punted from the judiciary to the executive branch to a 2 to 3 member parole panel. And if parole does not recommend their release because the crime was committed while they were under the age of 26, they can then get that decision reviewed by the full panel, which I believe is 11 parole board members. And from there, if it's denied, you'd have to go into court. But I do predict that the first round in the parole review process is going to be successful, and I hope for these young men's sake, young men not anymore, that they are granted parole and given a chance to re-enter society.
All right.